all the good players talk about like this is what you do versus CTM, like this is how you beat it, this is how you tackle it and how you dismantle the board state. And you know, even the top players will just go full fucking caveman brain and just go like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna run this, and like they float a tag and then they're fucked. Like even the
Yeah.
good players fuck up big time versus CTM.
Hello, everyone. This is a video where we discuss CTM. Uh, I think it was a really insightful talk with a couple of upstanding folks. However, our audio levels are a bit out of whack. Apologies, I've done a little bit to try and fix it, but I am not an audio engineer by any sense of the word. So if that bothers you, I will try and do a better job in the future and ask for your forgiveness. I'm also using some B-roll so that it's not just decks, or not just the deck list the whole time. So if you like that or didn't like that, please let me know in the comments. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Elwin. Most people in Netrunner circles will know me as Jakuza, Dutch TO. I'm white. I'm a big fan of playing horizontal-based decks. As such, I'm a big fan of CTM. And I think you might have seen some of my work. I've done the art for Hakarl. I've done the art for Rozeki. I'm also a big fan of lasering stuff. To you, Shroom.
Oh, hello. Yeah, my name is Anarchomushroom, also known as Pod, or I suppose the other way around. My name is Podrick. People in Netrunner will know me as Anarchomushroom, and yeah, like Elwin, I am a lover of all things that install assets and go horizontal. And CTM is probably one of my favorite IDs in the entire game. And yeah, it's great. I love talking about it, and I love defending its beautiful honor when people don't like it.
I'll be honest, I'm not the biggest CTM stand around. I find when I play it, I go, but how do I actually win a game? And then when I play against it, I go, how the heck do I not just lose on the spot? Which is a pretty wild place for the ID to be in. Um,
Yeah, it's one of these IDs that like it's. I remember hearing it described as like the cockroach of Netrunner. Like in both, like it is always. I don't think it's ever been truly bad. Like even in metas where there's a lot of APOC or there's a lot of like misbones, like it's still really strong, and it's a deck that is able to just pull itself out of really bad positions. Like I remember like watching TF34 play versus Analyze Chris in Worlds 2020, and Chris was on Freedom, and like that is a matchup that on paper Freedom should kind of walk over, especially Freedom in that meta. It had so many good tools. Uh, it still had access to stuff like StimHack, and yeah, Toby was just able to find the win and grind out the win. Um, like that's just kind of it's just kind of a ridiculous ID like that. And it's not even the ID, just the deck itself. Um,
I,
uh,
I think it's the ID. I'll be honest. I think if you tried to play this out of NEH, you'd become very sad very fast.
oh,
So
for sure.
As
I think
someone,
it's a critical. It's a bit of a critical mass. Like it's a mixture of the ID that enhances all the assets that you have.
as
Um,
someone who has often tried to import CTM deck builds into NEH to open up more influence or speed things up, yes, I agree, Jeff. If he does not CTM import into NEH, often it literally falls apart.
Elwin, you recently came first at BCom with I want to call it an off-meta CTM build, though I think I'll probably have both of you guys maybe talk a little bit about the history of CTM builds. But maybe let's start first with this CTM build and sort of, what you liked about it.
Okay, so so you're from the New York meta, right, Jeff?
Approximately, sure. Yes.
Okay.
To people
So,
not in the US, that's a good approximation.
yeah, but basically US. So MCA based CTM has been a thing in Europe for a while. It's a German thing. It's often referred to as und nutzen, which is a whole meme of its own. So I can't take full credit for the deck, but the original deck was built by Jackmate, and I just iterated on it, and it has a ridiculous number of games in my JNet account, so I feel very comfortable with it, which was literally the main reason why I chose to bring it. I was like, I just want to have a fun tournament. I just want to have fun games. Until the night before, I wasn't even sure I was going to play. So I just brought decks that I felt comfortable with, and yeah, this CTM I felt very comfortable with. What it wants to do is very simple. It wants to heavily pressure runner clicks. It wants to score a box real early, and a cyber deck sandbox, to be clear, and abuse a whole bunch of synergies in the deck list. And that also really describes what I really like about the deck list, because it's this whole package of synergies. Jeeves lets you purge for 4 once you have a box score, then go into a hard-hitting news with 4 more credits, or you purge, take a click away. Like, it all meshes so nicely together. The only really offbeat thing in there to me is the Aryabhata techs, which aren't that good, but I like to play offbeat decks. I like to play things that confuse my opponents. I like to play lists that are usually better in Swiss, if you know what I mean. And yeah, usually they fall a bit apart in the cut once the deck list is known, but still, it gives me an advantage because the deck list functions in a way that my opponent isn't entirely familiar with. And I've had big discussions with teammates about this, but I find it gives me a distinct advantage because people don't know what's going on, whilst I'm very comfortably with the deck itself.
Yeah, I think that's one of the interesting things if we compare like this version of CTM to what you brought to Worlds, which is like the same meta, right? But this is a very different take on CTM, and I suspect that the way you play against this list, this boom list, and the MCA list actually end up being pretty different, and maybe explain a little bit about why people like good players will kind of just like make mistakes against one version of CTM that they wouldn't make against the other, kind of thing. But I don't know.
Agreed. Agreed. I mean, my version, the Aryabhata version, it also definitely helped. It is definitely helped by most people being aware of the boom version is the more commonly known CTM list, I think. So they're more wary of, for instance, Mumbai virtual tours. So they're more hesitant to run things first turn, which you can abuse with this list, which I abused immensely during my first turn in the finals at BCom. Like that was my first turn. Oh, my first turn as the CTM in. Yeah, you saw Shroom. You saw. Oh god.
I was giving out because I was like, so the person in the finals, the runner in the finals, I was like screaming in my head because I was just like, one, you know the list, like as Owen said, like the list is not like the Aryabhata CTM doesn't have price X, it doesn't have Mumbai Virtual Tour. There's no real blowouts. Like if they install 3 things turn 1, you should just check all 3. Obviously, provided you have something like a gamble, like you have some way of getting up to a decent amount of credits, or falsified. But you can check all 3 remotes and feel pretty confident that you're not going to get wrecked turn one.
Yeah,
Um,
because I guess right, even if you
especially versus Elwyn as well. Like Elwyn will, as he did in the finals of BCOM, Elwyn will play cheeky and will install agendas naked on the board on turn one.
I will
yeah, I guess so
blatantly
that
install a
what, do you
box.
remember what the turn one was for those of us who
Yes.
weren't able to go to
Yes.
BCom?
Install 3 assets. First asset, Temple. Second asset, Jeeves. Or not assets, make free service. Temple, Jeeves, Cyberdeck Sandbox.
Oof.
Yes, and that leads you into a credit perfect second turn Cyberdeck Sandbox scores. And basically, once you have the first box with this list, the runner is so far behind because now your macrophages are turned on, your
Yeah.
econ is turned on, because the econ package looks quite light, but you have no problems at all anymore once you have a box.
Yeah, I mean your actual econ spends are also really small. Like there's basically one like it's like hard hitting news is the top end of your upfront cost, and then the rest of it's
Yes,
tracing out the runner. So
yes.
like, yeah, that's really interesting.
We also
Yeah, because
yeah,
I guess to me, I'm like, oh, the line is, oh, if I have a shirt, even the dirty laundry answers list, like you can check everything, trash the Rashida that I assume is coming down first turn, and like even float the tag for like up until the point where you find an agenda if you know the list in this case.
Mm-hmm.
well, the float you could float, but still you don't turn on the planet.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
guess.
like
Yeah.
I think like broadly speaking, like that is the correct thing to do versus this list is that you can. Now, one thing you do need to be careful of, and that's something that kind of the idea of like dirty laundering a remote turn one against CTM prior to Spin Doctor was pretty correct. You do need to
Hmm.
be kind of cautious now. You kind of need to ask yourself like, okay, like how blown out do I get if this turns out to be a spin? Now the odds are pretty low. Like there's a bunch of different assets in CTM. They're likely to do like a you know a relatively a not uncommon start for CTM is something like Data Business Show into Rashida into Commercial Bankers Group turn one, or like a Maryland into a Bankers into Rashida or something like that. So the odds of hitting a Spin Doctor are pretty low, but you do want to be careful.
Yeah, you don't want to get blown out that way.
Yeah, you don't want to get super blown out. But yeah, like against this Aryabhata list, you know, you can run pretty freely and not worry too hard. So long as you end your turn with enough money to clear hard hitting news tags, like you can kind you have a lot more. I think you have a lot more freedom than you do against say the more kind of common CTM like the Boom CTM, which is I think kind of the more well known or maybe more established version of CTM that people will be kind of and the one that I brought to Worlds as well. Um, because that one does play things like Mumbai Virtual Tour. It has Price X as well. Um, so it's a lot scarier um, to run remotes, random remotes that the corp installs turn one. Because if you hit a Mumbai Virtual Tour, that's that can just be like that can be game losing
Yeah,
in itself. Um,
I was play I was playing against the variant of this type of list at BCom, and I faced the same list 3 times, which wasn't exactly this list. That was a different list which also had Malias. Um, and that
Mm-hmm.
was, I know I was, and to be clear, I was playing Adam, so that was absolutely hellish because the whole time I had to figure out, are these MVTs on the board? What is there on the board? What can I get? A list with MVTs is a lot harder to play against than without MVTs. Fully agreed.
mhm.
Yeah, so I guess maybe a question for there's actually a lot of differences, but like there's a couple of overlapping cards, but there's I think there's maybe a question for people that are newer to the game or newer to standards. Like, what are the core elements and synergies that you guys see in CTM that make it a fun ID to play, but also a powerful ID to play?
Assets. I think
Yes.
pretty much any card that has type asset is going to be good in CTM. But I suppose being a little bit more specific, bankers, daily business show, Rashida, spin doctor. I think you will see in 99%, 99% of CTM lists will have those 12 assets in the deck. Um, and maybe you might have some lists where the bankers are Maryland instead because they want to get
Yes.
HB Alliance influence. Those are kind of the core sort of 9 or 12 cards that you will see in pretty much every CGM list. You know, if they're doing Aryabhata, if they're doing Boom, if they're doing um, vegan CTM, so like a CTM that doesn't have a kill package. Um, those are the 12 cards you're going to see in pretty much every. And the reason why they're so good for people who make, like, obviously, you know, Rashida's obviously Rashida. Rashida's a busted card. You play that in basically any core. But if you slap on an extra 4 credits to have to trash Rashida, like Rashida with trash cost of 5 is even better than a Rashida, a regular Rashida. But stuff like Bankers Group, you might look at Bankers Group and you might think, oh, that's very good, but the runner can just trash that. If you staple on the NBN, the ID tax, the CTM tax onto that, suddenly CTM or Bankers Group now has a way protecting itself. Daily business show, which is already a frustrating asset to deal with because it's got a low res cost and a high trash cost, and that's a big theme with CTM is low res, high trash cost. That's why you have things like Jeeves, MCA, Aryabhata, Amani Sinai, Daily Business Show. The big thing that all these cards have in common is that they are cheap to res, but very expensive to trash. And then you couple that with the CTM tax, the ID, you're then just compounding that, and it basically makes the board extremely difficult to deal with. So those cards are kind of the common, the overlapping pieces. I guess your core pieces are, you've a way to filter your cards, you've a way to get money, and then you've got, in the case of Rashida, you have both. And then Spin Doctor is obviously just a very, very good, generically good card. And after that, there's like some differences. You can go the MCA route, you can go Jeeves, you can go Kill, which is the way that I've been playing since Worlds. Um, and then you can add in a bunch of different upgrades as well. So you've got Mumbad Virtual Tour, which is a really good trap card. It's a way of protecting your bankers as well, because you can slap an MVT on bankers, and now suddenly the runner's like, well, now I need to deal with bankers. Then I need to take the Mumbad Virtual Tour hit. And if you've got an AR enhanced security or an Ares scored, like it just gets so much worse. And then that one asset is now suddenly impossible to deal with. And then you've also just got really, really annoying ice. Like IP block is, none of the ice you have is particularly taxing, with the exception of Toll Booth. Some lists, I played Hydra at Worlds. I've since actually cut Hydra for F2P instead. But yeah, you don't really look to tax the runner out, but the ice you have is really frustrating. IP block is annoying. Turnpike is annoying. F2P is annoying. Ping is really annoying. Ping is actually really good versus APOC decks. You put a ping on centrals, and then suddenly it becomes very hard for them to land an APOC and not stick 2 tags. So yeah, like that's kind of the core idea, I guess. If you're looking at cards that are kind of common across versions of CTM, obviously you're going to have differences, but that is kind of if you're sitting down to play against CTM, those would be the cards that I'm immediately thinking of that I'm going to be seeing and that I'm going to be kind of prioritizing a little bit to deal with as the game goes on.
You end with cards that you need to deal with, and that's an interesting one because
Yeah, because that actually varies, like list
that
by list.
exactly. That's the thing. That's the thing that makes these two different types of CTM so interesting, and that's one of the mistakes that I see many newcomers make, like not prioritizing the correct assets to trash. Like there's this Um, common take: you just have to trash all the money. But at BCom, for instance, in the finals, I literally let all the money live and just focused on killing all the win cons. So I had to kill all the sands and the other stuff because the more traditional kind of CTM, the the list we were just looking at, has a far harder finds it far harder to score off the board than the version that I was playing,
Yeah,
which is
once enough Beals and are like the Beals and tomorrow's headlines are out, like if those are split 2 and 2, it becomes very hard for CTM to have a route to actually scoring out.
yeah.
Yeah.
And also I was controlling HQ and R&D, so I had perfect info. So I just needed to kill all the win cons and then. But now I'm going into details way too much.
No, I mean, I appreciate. No, I think that's actually like a good point, and something that I've been trying to do when I'm playing against CTM is not trying to be like, oh, like I'm gonna like I have to kill their money. Like it's generally much more of wait, stop and think. How does the CTM? How does this list actually go and win? And trying to make
Yes,
sure that you're playing for the line that minimizes their chance of winning, because you can get to board states where even though CTM's super scary, it's very very challenging for them to actually go and win the game and score out.
exactly. So we were just talking about what kind of cards you commonly see in CTM. I have this way of looking at it. If I build if I build a deck, and it's 90% of the time it's an asset-based deck, then I cluster cards according to functionality, and that might also be helpful to new people. So I cluster. You have money cards, you have drawing cards, you have utility cards, and you have things that help you or the opponent win. That's a very rough classification, but still, it might be helpful because very roughly, kill money early, kill draw early if you can, but usually you can't. Secretly, DBS is the best asset in CTM often. Secretly, DBS is often the reason why CTM wins, but you don't know it because it happens completely out of sight. And if you can't kill those, or if the game progresses too long, then you have to kill win cons, and that's roughly how you want to deal with the my version of CTM.
And I think that does apply. Like, and I think like it is very much like beating CTM. Like you do need to like you're something that I find that is very good with CTM, and if you practice that matchup a lot, I find that your general threat assessment in terms of or threat analysis in terms of the game of Netrunner is improved an awful lot because the key with CTM is analyzing a board state and going, how do they win with this board state that they have? What are they trying to do? How are they looking to win? What disrupts them the most, and what puts them on the back foot the most, while also not setting me back. So your kind of analysis, your kind of threat analysis needs to be quite good to beat CTM. But
Yes.
generally speaking, if you can take care of the money early, then build up your own econ, and then start looking at their board and going, okay, what is keeping them in this game that is on the board right now? Usually it's a DBS. Okay, I need to deal with DBS. Okay, maybe they've managed to build up some money. Maybe they got a good hard hitting news and they've been able to kind of bring the credit parity back. How do I lose from here? Okay, I need to watch out for Sansan because if they can start, fast advancing, then I'm going to start losing and I'm going to be put on the back foot. Amani is another card that I think people don't trash often enough. It's the same as DBS. Usually
Amani
because
has to Amani has to die on sight.
yeah, it is very easy to lose games um, against Amani Sinai, and Amani Sinai is, and this is maybe a little bit tangential, but one of the reasons why I don't think Gagarin is very good as an asset ID at the minute, although it's actually it's decent. And I did well with it at BCom, but I think generally speaking, I think Gagarin is worse than CTM, is because it has no way of punishing. It has no outs for the runner if Gagarin gets a bunch of money. Whereas CTM, like Gagarin kind of only has one real plan. Like it's either trying to kill you or it's trying to fast advance. But like, you know, if the runner just stabilizes and gets their econ running and they're in a good kind of they have their engine and their board their rig, it's very easy for the runner to just slowly pick apart the corp. Whereas with CTM, you have access to things like DBS and Amani Sinai that on their own can keep you in the game way longer than you should. And Amani alone, can help you bounce back and get yourself into a winning board position. Um, which is why like it's just such a powerful it's a win con. Like it is actually just a win condition in itself. Um, so yeah, I think knowing what to trash and when to trash it is really important. Say like
I
if you look at say sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to ask, like, how do you, and maybe I want to, we've been talking a lot about how to beat CTM, but also, like, how do you build, like, intimidating board states of CTM? Because, like, I would assume there's more skill to it than just draw an asset, put an asset on the board, draw an asset, put an asset on the board, like, and just hope that you draw in the right order. Or
Yeah.
maybe, like,
Um. So part of it is, you know, in some regards, like the basic idea of CTM is at kind of a low enough level. I think the deck kind of somewhat plays itself. Like the lines are somewhat obvious, at a kind of a lower level. But I think like the best thing to do with CTM is that you need to present threats to the runner, and you need to um CTM is kind of how would you put it? I don't want to sound too much like the Crow meme, but there is a lot of bluffing involved with CTM, and you do kind of
Yes.
need to present a board state to the runner, and you need to constantly kind of ask the runner questions of this card that I just installed in this new remote could be the Ares that I'm trying to sneak out. It could be an Amani Sinai, it could be a Bankers. It could also be an MVT, and if you run it, you just fucking die. You just end up in tag hell. It could also so the way that I kind of tell people or suggest to people when they're playing as CTM kind of for the first time is try and try and always keep a threat on the table. So if you have say a bankers and that's ticking, that is a threat and the runner needs to deal with it. What I would then do if you have that on the board, then get like, you know, an MVT down or get like a daily bit or a regolith actually. I think regolith is really good in CTM. Get like a regolith down, and maybe click it once or click it twice. And now suddenly the runner has to go, well, shit, I have to deal with this bankers, and I've just dealt with this bankers, and now I've got to deal with this regolith. What you want to do is you want to get the runner in a position where, so the best way to beat CTM is, or to one of the best things to do versus CTM is trash as many things as you can in one turn. If you can trash like 3 or 4 assets and you only proc their ID once, you are in a very good. That is a good turn for you, especially if you have something like Miss Bones to help you with, or Imp, or Freedom's ability, or whatever. But some way of keeping liquid money available to you. So as the corp, what you want to do is tax them and compress them so that they can only deal with one thing a turn. So you might do a bankers and would say an MVT, and then suddenly the runner's like, okay, I just need to deal with that. I can deal with that, and then you'll go like, oh, here's a daily business show, um, and or here's a Sansan behind something kind of annoying like an IP block or an F2P, and then suddenly the runner is going, shit, now I need to deal with this, but I have to deal with this bankers first, so I'll deal with that next turn. You kind of want to build board states where the runner cannot, like, the runner is trying to deal with a threat and you're putting another threat in front of their face, and you are forcing them to kind of spend their resources in you're trying to split their resources effectively.
Yes.
That's the best way to kind of describe it. Is you are trying to pull them in separate directions. Like they want to deal with the money, but they also need to deal with the ice, but they also need to, deal with centrals because you've got a Sansan on the board, so and a DBS, so they need to try and R&D lock you, but they can't properly R&D lock you. Maybe you're tagged, like you're in tag hell, so now you need to find the boom and get rid of the boom before they can kill you. But you also need to deal with and that is what you want to be putting the runner into. You want to be putting them into a place where they need to like sit and think, and they have 3 different problems, but only one. They can only deal with one of those problems at a given time.
What you just said, Podrick, that's basically what you just said about making the runner want to go in different directions, giving them difficult decisions to make. Could you scroll down a bit, Jeff,
Yeah.
in the list to the GIF?
Ah, yes.
GIF. This is what I want to do to the runner. If the runner feels like this, then my CtM or whatever deck I'm playing is doing what it needs to do. I want to tear the runner in different directions. So Pod put it absolutely perfectly, way more eloquently than I could do at this time of evening. That's what you want to do. I will say one more thing. One thing, just wow, that was a sound.
Apologies, that's probably my dog in the background. I'll mute my mic for a second, and then you can say your one more thing.
Hello, dog. So Pod just talked a lot about what you want to do to the runner as CtM, but one thing I have a slightly different take on it. I also have a take from a more basic take as well that might resonate well with newer players. At a very basic level, I want to continually accelerate my own game plan, or decelerate or slow their game plan down. Any decision, anything that I can do that accelerates me more, and this is why I love assets so much, because ice does nothing. Ice just sits there, does nothing. It's boring. A DBS accelerates me every single turn that the DBS gets to live, etc., etc. So every single decision that I can take, every single click that I can take that accelerates me, I will likely take a click that way to accelerate me more. So, for example, going for Jeeves efficiency, I will try to go for Jeeves efficiency. That's also why this list works for me, because I can heavily pressure runner clicks and I can just keep gaining extra clicks along the way. And whilst speeding up my own plan and hopefully slowing down their plan, and the threat or the actual hitting of Harding obviously also helps with slowing them down. I also have to definitely present threats, and hopefully, how to say this, draw them in different directions. Sorry for probably my English is quite subpar due to the lateness.
Yeah, you're doing quite well, but I think it's, honestly, you guys have been very generous with your time. I think this is already plenty of a great little video for people. So I guess maybe we'll wrap it up here so that you can go to sleep, and well, I would say Anarcho could go to sleep as well, but I know that's not going to happen for another 5 hours. So
Yeah. Jeff knows that, like, if Jeff decides to stream in 3 hours, I'll be in that stream chat. I'll be
Jesus
watching for at
Christ.
least like Time means
Control
nothing,
your
dude.
life, Pod. Control your life.
That is, look, I can control the message, but I can't control my life.
Oh, oh.
That was good. I'm proud of that.
You should be. You should be proud. You should be very. That was
Um,
beautiful.
Thank you. One thing I will say, and this is just, you know, it's very hard to give generally good advice, like in terms of like plays that you can make and things that you do versus CTM. It's kind of hard to give good advice because the lists can vary. I've actually changed my worlds list pretty substantially. I'm now running one archived, one boom, and Amalia. I'm also running psychographics and exchange of information, and a 15
Nice.
minutes. I've cut an Aries for a 15 minutes, because it gives you, well, one, it gives you a little bit of an easier scoring pattern, but it also gives you the exchange of information win condition. But and I've swapped the ice a little bit around. But it's really hard to give like generically good advice against CTM. Like exact plays because the lists are so different. Board states are so important. Like it's easier to kind of go, what can I do in this situation and describe a board state, and but something if you're watching this and you're maybe a newer player or you're an experienced player who just fucking hates CTM and hates playing against it on JNet, um, something that I can kind of suggest to you, um, well, one thing is just sort of take your time. CTM doesn't win quickly. The games that CTM wins quickly are the games like those games are it wins them quickly because you fucked up and you ended up in tag hell and the runner and the corp was able to boom you or psycho or EOI you or score out because they econned your drained all your money away. But take your time, and one good thing that I see a lot of people on JNet do, don't trash assets out of centrals. Do
Oh
not
God
trash
no.
assets out of centrals.
God no.
It sounds like a really stupid thing to say. Like Rashida, yeah, sure, trash it out of R&D if you see a Rashida or you see Rashida in HQ. Same with bankers, same with spin. If you need to spend 3 credits to trash something out of a central, do not do it. Just do not do it. It is the easiest way to just lose versus CTM.
Eh, I will interject for a second. With my version, you might want to consider trashing the MCAs.
Maybe you might want to,
Not always, but sometimes you do.
but you can leave an MCA ticking for a turn or two. If you're in a position where you can afford the 3 credit hit to trash MCA out of HQ or R&D, then yeah, do it.
Yeah.
But don't like so many games I've seen a runner go turn 1, they'll like draw, they'll run R&D and they'll see like a Mumba temple and they'll trash it and then they'll click for a credit. And then they get hard hitting news. And then they're in tag hell. And then I blow up all their resources. And then I kill them 2 turns later. And it's just like, just don't do that. Just take it easy. Slow down. Build your own econ. Get your daily casts. Empty your daily casts. Empty your liberated. Um, a really good thing you can do, like if you like to play Anarch and you play liberated accounts, just plan a turn ahead. Go, okay, this turn, nothing's out of control. I'm not really in a position to trash multiple things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all the money off this liberated account. I'm going to start my next turn with like 20 credits. And next turn, I'm going to blow up this card, and this card. And I'm going to end with enough money to clear HHN. That, perfect. That is, without knowing, detailing an exact board state, that is exactly the kind of winning play for CTM. Going, oh yeah, I've just seen a Mumba temple, so I'm gonna trash this. I'm gonna trash this daily business show off of R&D, and then install a daily cast and then click for a credit. Like that is just, you're asking for trouble. You're asking for trouble there because that's just that is a losing play. So just be conscious of your credits. Be conscious of your opponent's credits, and just you know take it easy with what you're trashing, especially if it's out of centrals. Don't trash stuff out of centrals. It's not you might think, oh, you know, well, it's not going to trigger their ID, or you want to trash stuff out of essentials because it's easier, but it's just it causes you problems. Do not. And if you can just slow the game down, and you can end up and you're in the runner late game, and you have your money, you have Rozekis, your daily cast, whatever you need, and you can just slow it down. If you get to that point, all you really need to worry about is Amani and Sanson City Grid. And if you can keep those two cards off the board, CTM can't score out. It doesn't have Anoetic Void, it doesn't have Skunk Works, it doesn't have border controls, can't score agendas. It can only fast advance them out. And at that point, then, it's just smooth sailing.
Yeah, it's easier said than done, but
It
it's
is
sort
it is
of.
easier said than done, but it
But
is.
the way runner decks are constructed at the moment, the way to beat CTM is not to like it's not a sprint against CTM. It really is more of like a long slog,
Yeah,
with the idea that most runner decks are probably going to beat it if it goes long, and that's sort of that's the it seemed like the idea behind Elwyn's deck was like, oh, let's just like turn up the pace a little bit more. And the boom lists are a bit more like, well, people like to go fast, and this punishes going fast even harder.
yeah,
So it's sort of broadly maybe or very crudely, I should say, the two philosophies for these two
yeah,
decks. So,
pretty much.
all right, well, thank you so much to both Elwyn and Padraig for coming on, and
Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff.
yeah, thanks everyone for watching. So.